Hi, my name is Gudrun from GEasy, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make this really adorable tissue box cover made with the Quilt as you go method. Now let's get started on putting together a tissue box cover. Now first off, make sure you have your pattern and all your pieces cut out according to the pattern. So we have our piece of batting that is already pre-cut to size, and then we have our bottom fabric piece, our top fabric piece, and then we have the accent fabric. So the accent fabric should be one large rectangle and then two strips. The first thing we want to do with the strips is take both the 2-inch strip and the 1-inch strip and just take them to your iron and press them in half like this, just like you were doing binding. Now the wider one we are going to use for binding, but the 1-inch one is just going to be a little flange, decorative flange. So once you have that done, we're going to start with our batting piece and layer our bottom fabric right along the bottom of the batting with raw edges together. They should be the same width, and so just aligning it like this. If you have directional fabric, make sure it's turned exactly like this is the bottom. And then we're going to take our folded strip here and just going to align the raw edges with the top raw edges of the bottom fabric like this. And then we're going to take our top fabric and layer that on top, right sides together, again aligning all of those raw edges. And now we want to pin, and normally I would pin this way, but this is such a tiny strip that's underneath, so we want to make sure that we pin it. I'm just going to pin it this way, so as I sew I can remove my pins, because this way is the only way to make sure that that little strip of flange stays in place. So there. Now make sure you have your walking foot on your sewing machine, and then we're going to go ahead and sew just with a 1/4-inch seam through all the layers, catching that little flange inside the seam. So now we want to take that top fabric and then just pull that back, press that out. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So here we go. That top fabric should reach to the top of edge of the batting on the top here. And I'm just going to use scissors to trim that flange to size here, since that was oversized. So now we are going to take that 2-inch accent strip and we're going to sew that to the top here. So again, it's going to be oversized, but we're just going to sew with a 1/4-inch seam all the way down and through all the layers using your walking foot. Now we have that here. I'm just going to trim it size, and now this is going to be our binding that top edge. So what I want to do is press it outwards, and then I'm going to fold it over to the back here and press it this way too, because we're going to top stitch and catch that on the back side to hold our binding down. So now I've pressed this over and around to the other side. So you want to make sure that that fold over that you folded over is reaching over that seam, because now we're going to go ahead and top stitch here on the front side really close to the edge of that binding, and it's going to catch that fold on the back side. So now I have secured my binding on the back, and so it's time to add the lining piece, which is our accent fabric piece. So we're going to sew that, flip it on top, align the bottom raw edges here, and just sew across the bottom this way. So here I sewed this way, and then you want to just press outwards. So you'll see on the back side that you only have batting up here, but this will extend, and that is exactly how it's supposed to be. So now we want to fold this whole piece in half, so right sides together, and we're just going to sew with the seam here down this way and then press that seam open. So what you want to make sure is that you're matching up the seams everywhere, so they're going to kind of match up on the side here. So I'm just going to grab some clips to hold mine in place, making sure I'm matching up the little decorative flange and the top. And then I want to match this seam as well on the bottom. So we want to make sure we sew all the way through this single layer of fabric as well, which is just that lining fabric. So sew all the way down this way. So as you can see, I sewed it and then I just pressed it open. It's quite thick, so it's not going to lay really flat, but as long as you get a little press open here, you're good, because we're going to now fold it up again. So we're going to cut out our box corners that we're going to box on the top here. So what you want to do is cut a square from each corner that is 2 inches. And an easy way to do this is measuring. So we want to measure from the edge here of the binding and then this edge, so 2 inches this way. But on the other side where the seam is, we want to make sure we go from the edge on this side and then from the seam. So I like to draw my box first and then just cut it with scissors. So I'm just going to grab my ruler, put the 2-inch line on each side here, draw my square, and do the same on the other side. But I'm putting my 2-inch line on the ruler right on the seam versus the edge of the fabric here. There we go. So now we want to cut this out. So now we have our box corners, and what we want to do now is fold them out. So you're going to have these loose, but we're going to fold these. So pull this out and then align these raw edges. Now I like to open up the seam. I start on the seam side to make sure I'm matching that binding edge right at the seam. And then I'm going to actually pin this because it's going to be easier to get in there versus having a clip. So I'm going to do each side right on each side of the seam, and then I take the other side, pull that out, and just butt up the 2 bindings. As you can see here, they're just kind of being butted up together because we're going to stitch right across here. I want to make sure I pin this, and so this is the seam we're going to sew. I'm going to do that on the other side as well. So what I like to do with these box corners, after I sew it with just a 1/4-inch seam, I like to go over the edge with a zigzag to secure all the raw edges. All right, as you can see, I stitched and then zigzagged the edges so they should be nice and secure. So now what we're going to do is turn our whole piece right side out. I push out the corners. And now what we're going to do is fold this lining piece to the inside. So that you have this little edge here on the outside where the batting ends, and that's the fold, what we want to do. What you can do is just go to your iron and then just press here along the inside to get a little sharper edge. So I'm going to do that and come back and show you where we want to top stitch. So now I have it pressed, a little bit of a sharp edge. So the last piece we want to do is go to our sewing machine and we're just going to top stitch right in the ditch here along the bottom seam, and then also right here between that flange and the top fabric. So right along that seam to secure that lining piece inside. So now I've done my top stitching on the bottom, and then along this edge. It's a little hard to get in there, but it is worth it because it secures your lining fabric. So all that's left now is slipping it over our tissue box. So it should be just the standard tissue box size, and it should be a pretty snug fit. If you pull it down, it should cover the sides all the way, and we have our opening for our tissue at the top. I hope you enjoyed making the tissue box cover. What a quick and fun project to make for gifts. Make it for any season or to match your personal decor. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.